Hey guys, what is up? Ioki here, bringing you the first updated tier list of Season 12. We're going to be making a tier list for patch 12.3, which just dropped yesterday at the time of recording. So if you guys are curious about what champions you should be playing and which champions you should be avoiding on the current patch to climb as support, then this is the absolute perfect video for you. For those of you who are maybe new to the channel or don't know who I am, I'm a multi-season high elo support player. I've got lots of solo queue and high-level competitive experience, so I bring a lot to the table in terms of support game knowledge. I've been playing a lot of solo queue on this patch, and it is a big one. I really like this patch. I like the direction that the game is going for support. We've got all kinds of new champions to support, such as Zeri, and even new champions to play as, such as Renata. Even though she's not technically out till next patch, we have played her, so we're going to give our thoughts on her in this video. But let's get right into it, guys. We're going to be going from the worst to the best champions. So these champions down in tier 5, I genuinely just don't recommend you play at all. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Annie is just one of those champions that used to be, you know, absolute top tier in the support position, and it's just she's fallen off. She just cannot keep up. Her kit is too simple. Her numbers are not there. She's tuned around being a mid laner. Same for Malzahar. Now, there is one high elo Anivia one-trick support who is named Anivia support, but this guy plays Anivia support all day long, every day. I just don't think Anivia is a champion that anyone should pick up and be like, oh, I can play him as a support because that guy can. I think that's 100% like a specialized thing and shouldn't be held as like some sort of standard. Yeah, so they do bring utility. They bring slow, stun, you know, a very unique CC with the wall, but I want to play Anivia support, guys. Fiddlesticks, this one makes me really sad because Fiddlesticks support was like one of my first mains ever. Fiddlesticks was my first main ever. I played Middlesticks, mid fiddles, pre-rework, and then I transitioned him down into the bot lane, started playing him support, but he's just really bad. He's tuned around being a jungler. He's off the table. Nunu. So this is one of those champions that people just really wish worked as a support and really doesn't work as a support. You would think that they do. They've got lots of CC. You know, they've got peel. They've got that snowball to engage with. They've got utility. They've got slows. All kinds of stuff. Just don't do it. Nunu support is not worth playing as a support. Ivern, same thing. All kinds of utility. Like when Ivern was coming out, everyone was like, oh my god, he's going to be a support. Nope, he's a jungler. All right, so like I said, didn't want to spend too much time talking about it. We'll talk more and more as we get up into the champions that I do think you should be playing. Okay, so as for tier 4, you are hurting your climb by playing these champions, but they are so much more playable than the ones that we discussed in tier 5. If you watch the stream, you know that I play Malphite support all the time. These are kind of like relegated to like cheese champions. Poppy can be a decent counter pick if they lock in like Leona or something, or they've got a lot of dashes and you don't want them to be dashing. Malphite can be played as like a kill lane, you know, full AP and then press R at level 6. Sion can do some cheesy stuff. That's kind of like a running theme you'll see in this tier 4 is that like, yeah, you can cheese with these champions, that you can make them work, but like not consistently. And if you're up against players that don't fall to the cheese, fall victim to it, you're not going to see too much success. Like, for instance, you can sit in a bush and like charge up your smash, and then, you know, that will work against some players as Sion. You know, you can trap the bush as Shaco, but it's more effort than it's worth, and you're going to be getting, when you're playing solo queue, you want to be going with the most consistent champion, and that extends to builds and stuff as well. So we're going to be talking about builds later in the tier list. Camille support, again, she had her limelight. She was actually played in the LCS a couple seasons ago, but they've just tuned her down and just 100% balanced her around top lane. Nico, now this is one that people get really mad about when I put her so low on the list. I really just think that Nico is a shorter range, significantly worse version of Lux. I don't really know why people play her as support. I think it's just like devoted Nico mains that also play support. So MF support, I'm going to be talking about MF support a little bit later when we compare to Ashe support, because they play very similarly. MF support is 100% more cheese oriented than Ashe, whereas Ashe support operates more around her hard engage with her ultimate, her vision utility with her E, her easy poke with her W, but that easy poke is really the only thing that they have in common other than being immobile marksman. You're always putting yourself at a big disadvantage by locking in a marksman support, because what that does is put a big red arrow pointing to the bot lane with the jungler saying, hey, come farm us, we have no way of protecting each other. And it's the same problem that happens even with champions like Senna, who are primarily played support. You're just weak. Putting another immobile weak marksman in the bot lane, you're just going to get ganked. You're like, if you fall behind, you're going to be pretty useless. So I would say if you fall behind as MF support, you're very useless. If you fall behind as Ashe support, you're still somewhat useful. J4, one of my favorite off-meta picks. He's seen better days, but if you are interested in playing J4 support, make sure you're going like the AP build where you go Airy, because you can actually use your E and it'll proc Airy like 3 times, giving your allies all kinds of shields. It's super fun, not super good. So Ahri, let's talk about Ahri. She is 100. She's going to remain in tier 4 support. She did get a rework coming out either on this patch or next patch. I've looked through the numbers. I watched some gameplay, and I played against it, and I'm pretty conclusive that I'm pretty confident that the rework actually makes her worse as a support, because it encourages her to get minion kills and champion kills, both of which are less likely to get on support. So now that she's been tuned around as like almost like this reset assassin, where she gets extra charges for getting kills, and you can still play her as a cheese support, but if you play her as a support, make sure you're running Glacial. She's really, really good with Glacial when she hits her charm. Rammus, same thing for Rammus, man. He's just one of those champions that when he got reworked, everyone was like, oh my god, he's going to be god tier support. But nope, he's still just better at jungle. Taliyah is relegated to something I call kill cheese lanes, where if you play something like Draven Taliyah, or even like a non-marksman with Taliyah support, it can work. I've played like Galio Taliyah, stuff like that. Anything that, Taliyah can bump them into you, and if that champion is capable of getting a kill, then you'll probably get a kill. But it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of mastery of the champion, and she just plays really, really weird. So I can't in good faith put her above tier 3 or tier 4. Okay, let's talk about tier 3. This is the biggest tier, and this is the largest collection of champions, because this is average. So these champions are average. They should only be played if you are skilled with them, if they are used as counter picks. Now we're going to talk about counter picks a lot in this set of champions, because with champions like Morgana, she's the queen of counter picks. You let them lock in a hard engaged champion, and Morgana is a god tier. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about like choosing the most consistent option, right? You don't want to be first picking Morgana every single game, but if you plug her into good matchups or counter pick people with them, you're going to have much more success. So not all of these are counter picks. Most of these are just, like I said, average champions. So already talked a little bit about Ashe. She's got a lot of utility, a lot of poke. I would love to see Riot one day rework this champion into just a pure support. Like, I've always had this idea that she should be this like ranger champion, where like she could see like the footsteps of champions that have been nearby and like track them around and stuff. I don't know why. I just always thought that was a really cool idea. But as she's a very, very simple champion, very easy to operate, super easy poke. You want to run Arcane Comet and just poke them with W, and then run full CDR, so you can just be an arrow bot hard engager. Shin, always talked about Shin as being a higher damage, riskier version of Leona, because if Leona misses her E, oh well, it's not that big of a deal. You got to wait for the cooldown. You might take a little bit of poke, a little bit of harassment, but if Shin misses his taunt, he has now missed his only high cooldown CC, and is now he has moved himself into the middle of danger. So, but he does do a lot of damage, and I just freaking love Shin players. So for that reason, he's tier 3. Bard is one of those champions that if you are a Bard one trick, he is tier 1. If you are just an average Bard player, he is somewhere around tier 3. I'm going to move him to the higher end of tier 3, just because he does have a really, really great fleet footwork build going around right now that is just top tier. Check it out on the YouTube if you haven't checked it out yet. Taric, this champion is just outside of very niche scenarios where like you're funneling with like a Master Yi or something. I don't think playing Taric is like pretty much ever a good idea. He's just so reactive and slow, and in my opinion, boring. And he's just hard to make work in solo queue where you don't have communications. Pantheon support, pretty much the manlier version of like Taliyah support. You just you only want to play him in kill lanes. You do not want to play him in a game that you think is going to scale, or you don't want to let the game scale when you're playing Pantheon. You want to end that game in 15 to 20 minutes. Tom Kinch. We are once again going to move this champion to the higher end of tier 3. I can't quite put him in tier 2 yet, just because he is very, very matchup dependent. Tom Kinch is a weird one. He got a rework last patch that does significantly make him much better in the support position. However, he is only truly God tier and can only compete with the tier 1 champions that we'll see later in the video if you're pairing him with a Senna. And the best way to play Tom Kinch right now is to play him as something called Fasting Senna, where he is basically playing as the ADC for a Senna support that is basically the marksman. So you put Tom Kinch in, you let him farm. He's playing ADC Tom Kinch with a Fasting Senna, but they're kind of like Tom Kinch is still acting as the support. He's still peeling and tanking and all this stuff. It's a weird strategy, but that is 100% the best way to play Tom Kinch right now. And is that even a support? I don't know. If you're just locking in Tom Kinch as a regular support, he's still like on the better side of average right now. Swain, really, really fun champion, can absolutely dominate the game. Can't really compete with the best tanks and enchanters right now. Vel'Koz, same thing. Unless you're a Vel'Koz one trick, champion seems very, very underwhelming. Teemo, I always say Teemo is the most underrated support in the game because people think that he's down here, when in reality, he's up here. So is he a top tier champion? No, but he's much better than people think he is. He's got that blind. Every single game, the Teemo blind is going to be useful because you're playing against the marksman in the bot lane. He is a very low economy champion, which means he only needs like one item to do ridiculous amounts of value and damage. But I won't spend the rest of this video gushing about how much I love Teemo support. On to the next one, Galio. He's one of these champions that's really good as a counter pick. If you are against something like a Leona or a Thresh, and you still need a tank, Galio is a good one. If you are against a Leona or a Thresh and you don't need a tank, Morgana's a better pick. Don't want to talk about Braum. Brand is really, really good if you know how to build. If you are just locking in Brand and going Dark Harvest, Leandries every single game, he's pretty bad. You're once again just trying to get ganked by putting in a mobile squishy in the bot lane, but he does have decent poke. Like if you know when to swap out for the Comet build or swap out Leandries for Ludens, or even the new Rylai's build going around, if you have decent itemization game knowledge, I think Brand can definitely work. Nautilus, we're going to be moving this guy actually up to tier 2. I meant to move him before the video started, but we'll talk about him later. Alistar is just the worst tank support in the game. There are just so much better options. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend playing Alistar right now. If you're going to, I would go for like cheese builds with like Phase Rush or Glacial Augment. I wouldn't be trying to lock in full tank Alistar and trying to compete with the actual big dogs of the tanking world. Yumi I moved her down, I think 2 tiers this video. Yumi is really, really struggling. I think that she is probably the worst enchanter in the game. Now, there's always going to be that coin flip level of like usefulness and value when choosing this champion, because if you have a Yumi and your jungle gets fed, Yumi will let that jungle carry the game. But beyond that, she has so little agency. She doesn't really have a super strong build right now. I would for sure avoid playing Yumi. Now you're still going to see your Yumi games pop off when you said, but it's so low agency that I just really don't like playing it or encouraging people to play it. Morgana, already talked about her. She's the queen of counter picks. Rakan will most likely always be tier 3 unless the meta for sure suits him, and that would constitute like Xayah being top tier. So Xayah, Rakan being a top tier bot lane. Outside of that, Rakan is just like a jack of all trades, master of none. He's got good engage, he's got good peel, good shielding, good decent healing, but he's not the best at any of those. So it's like if your team needs engage and you're choosing Rakan, you're kind of screwing your team over a little bit. Now, if you already have like a well-rounded team, Rakan is a champion that you can just kind of slot in to kind of help, everything, all the moving parts of your team. But if you need an enchanter, if you need a healer, you should be choosing one of the good ones. That being said, I love playing Rakan, and I'm going to keep playing Rakan, but I know that he is relatively subpar right now. Gragas, I really think the only reason Gragas ever existed in bot lane is because his E flash gives him basically a engage with no counterplay, and because his hitbox is so good, is so freaking wide that it's really easy to knock champions like Leona out of her E. Outside of like high level competitive play, I don't think I ever see Gragas, and I don't even think the pros are playing Gragas support anymore. So No more talk about Gragas. Syndra, she's better. She's like Teemo. She's better. She's better in the support position than people think. You want to go something like Comet or Airy and just hardcore harass starting level 1. Just, tapping people with your Q. Ornn support. He's very unique, and there is also a high elo player named Ornn support who does pretty well with it. That being said, he's just like an awkward kind of champion to play in the role, especially because one of the most attractive parts about Ornn is his late game, where he gets to level up other people's items, but that's level dependent, and you don't get very many levels as a support, so it's like, why are you playing him as a support? I would much rather have an Ornn top. Rel. I think I forgot Rel on our last tier list, so sorry about that, girl. But it's so fitting because Rel is like truly the forgotten champion. Completely average in all regards. She very rarely gets any buffs or nerfs or even mentioned or remembered. I think the only time Riot has mentioned her outside of her release is when they made a happy birthday post on their Twitter. Like, it's just sad. If anyone out there is maining Rel, listen, hey, keep fighting the good fight, bro. I feel for you. Xerath is in the same boat as Vel'Koz. I never noticed how weird their names are. Xerath and Vel'Koz. Same boat as Xerath. Xerath's in the same boat as Vel'Koz. They're just, poke champions, and poke champions are not necessarily, like, super in the meta right now. Vex. Vex, this is the first time we're putting Vex on our tier list. I do think that this champion has a lot of potential. I play quite a decent amount of Vex, which you'll know if you watch my stream. You want to go for not a glacial augment, a Comet build with CDR boots and Everfrost, and it's quite good. People really don't see the all-in coming once you hit level 6. You all in, you Everfrost them, you get the guaranteed fear with your WEQ. It's pretty decent all in. Amumu. Since his rework, his little double bandage toss rework, he's been much better in the support position, but they did significantly nerf the mana cost on his Q, and he can really only do that double Q like one time in the laning phase pre-level 6. So unless you make that one time work, it's really not worth to play this champion. Maokai has fallen quite out of grace, in my opinion. I think it's just the rise of enchanters, which he just can't compete with in terms of like their actual usefulness. When it was a tank meta and you could go full AP Maokai that also acted as a tank, he could be just as tanky as a Thresh without going tank items. So that was really good. But now that Thresh is sitting down here in the slums with him in tier 3, there's no real reason to be locking this champion, in my opinion, which sucks because he actually, like, I've spammed hundreds of games with this guy in solo queue. Thresh, just talked about him a little bit. I think the most successful build right now is Glacial Augment, which should say something, because if you're locking in a tank support and not going tank runes, what is the point, guys? But yeah, not a huge fan of Thresh, not really seeing a whole lot of succeeding Threshes. Seraphine is the second worst enchanter, which we're going to talk a lot about enchanters coming up, because they're very good right now, but Seraphine is for sure the second worst enchanter. Just all around average, no real reason to pick this champion. Zac, really good engage. If you get used to this champion is pretty cracked. A part of me almost thinks that he's not even balanced how much like base damage this guy has. We've already talked about Bard and Tahm Kench. So let's get into the champions that I do think you should 100% be playing. This is the tier 2 champions. These champions are very good on the current patch. Either they've gotten buffed or reworked, or just the meta suits them. I know, for instance, Nami actually got a buff on this current patch. It's not necessarily a buff, but it is going to work as a buff. So basically, they've shifted around the numbers on her passive. It goes from 45 plus 20% AP for 1.5 seconds to 90 movement speed plus 20% ratio, which decays over 1.5 seconds. So it decays now, but you get that bigger burst in the beginning. And let's be honest, that initial burst is going to be pretty important. And then the Tidecaller's Blessing. They actually did nerf the Tidecaller's Blessing. Interesting. But this is still going to operate as a overall buff, in my opinion. Enchanters are just really good right now. But let's talk about someone who's not an enchanter. Nautilus, have been finding some success with Nautilus. I think he's the tank champion that works best with Glacial. just know that Nautilus is a champion that relied on Aftershock to be tanky. So let me say that again. I think he's the best champion. He's the best tank champion to abuse this new Glacial on tank meta. However, he's not like Leona. He can't just press W and get tons and tons of resistances. He is a tank champion that needed Aftershock to be tanky, which has always been a weakness of his, because if you ever get him to blow his Aftershock, he's very, very squishy. This new Glacial build kind of goes in a different direction to try to circumvent that, because you don't have that problem if you don't bring Aftershock. But you do have pretty much better engages now with the Glacial. It's very, very hard to get out of it once you proc it. So I think for that reason, I think he's pretty successful with Glacial. We're going to move him up to tier 2. Soraka, champion's really, really boring to play, but can be a viciously aggressive poke support in lane, and then just makes people unkillable outside of lane. Only play this champion if you have really, really good positioning, though, because she's super, super easy to kill, obviously. Same for Nami. Already talked a little bit about her buff. I think she's really, really great at empowering hyper carries, and hyper carries ADCs are in style right now. You see a lot of Jinxes running around, Jins, stuff like that. Let's talk about Pyke, because this is the highest Pyke has been in a long, long time. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about the interruption. We're back. But yeah, Pyke is really, really good. I think Pyke hasn't seen any buffs recently, but he's seeing a massive spike in play and massive spike in success. I have like an 80% win rate on Pyke in high elo. It's really, really good. And I think the reason is because we are seeing less and less tanks locked at the bot lane. We are seeing more and more juicy, squishy enchanters, which are basically just like prey for Pyke. So yeah, very, very high impact champion. I would highly recommend you getting some practice in on him. And this isn't important, but he's fun. He's super fun. Every time you make a mistake, it feels like it was your mistake. However, it can be very infuriating when you miss his ultimate by an inch, or someone flashes out of your stun, stuff like that. So Pyke is like, bro, he's so fun, but it's like your enjoyment rests on a needle's edge. You're either going to have the time of your life or be infuriated by how the game is going. But Pyke is very good right now. Play Pyke. Blitzcrank, same thing. Blitzcrank is always going to be... Tyler One recently said something about how Blitzcrank is the best scaling champion in the game, because you can miss a 99% of your hooks and hit that one hook in late game, and it wins the entire game. Do I agree with Blitzcrank being one of the best scaling champions in the game? No. But he is very, very good, just like Pyke against all these squishy, immobile enchanters. All it takes is one hook to change the game. Zyra is the best, pretty much the only poke support that should even be played right now. She's got Electrocute builds, Dark Harvest, Comet, Leandries, Ludens, all kinds of stuff. I would recommend same thing as like playing Brand. Just have some good game knowledge in terms of itemization and when to go it. So Leona has been moved out of tier 1 for the first time. And I can't really put my finger on why. I have just not... I've seen one game of Leona this entire season. She is falling out of favor. I find myself locking in Leona less and less. And when I do, she's just not as good as she used to be anymore. There's just something about the way that the meta has shifted that does not favor Leona at all. Now, she's always going to be the best tank support. So if your team absolutely needs a tank and you can't afford to lock one of the jungler top, Leona's your girl. But as for now, I think Leona is on the better side of average. This is not a bad champion by any means. On the better side of good, actually. She's just not top tier. She can't compete with the big dogs. Zillion, really, really underrated enchanter with the weird playstyle. That revive is always, always, always going to be god tier. Max your E. Don't go for like cheesy Q max split builds. Just max your E. Zillion pairs really well with like hypercarry junglers like Hecarim, who scale off of movement speed. You know, you put your E onto Hecarim and he just charges into the enemy team and one-shots everybody. Karma, I think, is one of the stronger enchanters right now. She's just an all-arounder. She's like the enchanter version of Rakan. She's got really, really great shielding. Got that mantra Q, got for laning phase, decent poke lane, and really, really good shields in team fights. Sona, champion, punishes people who don't end the game, and people are really bad at ending the game in solo queue. She scales well. She's got good itemization. There's a lot of other people are picking enchanters, so like if the enemy team picks an enchanter, that's when you lock in Sona. She's like the anti-enchanter because no enchanter scales harder than Sona. So if the enemy team locks in enchanter and you're not against like a Draven Leona or something that's going to kill you, you basically just get to scale for free throughout the laning phase, right? And no one scales harder in terms of numbers than Sona. Champion is actually cracked. Let's talk about tier 1. We got some familiar faces and some brand new faces. We got Janna. This champion post rework is absolutely insane. I'm telling you, insane. She's got her Q is 90 times faster. She's got this increased shield and heal power when she CCs people. She is an incredible synergy with the new Glacial Augment. You send a Q down the lane at 15,000 miles per hour. It knocks them up. They're glacial. They can't move. You got the disengage. You got the playmaking. You got the offensive Qs. Janna is an incredible enchanter right now. Absolutely player. Alongside her, Lux still staying in tier 1. Really, really versatile champion. You can go an enchanter build with full shields and guardian. You can go a kill lane with like Comet or Electrocute or Dark Harvest. Really, really versatile champion. And one of the strengths of this champion is that it's a flex pick, so you can first pick it, and people won't know if it's going to be support or mid. So let's say you first pick your Lux support, enemy team thinks it's mid, and they lock something that's good against Lux mid. See how there's strength in that? Senna. Love the fact that Senna is back in meta, and she might be stronger than ever, guys. She has so many incredible matchups. If you don't know, they basically added a scaling slow on her Q. And this, when I say scaling, I mean it scales. Like, it starts the game at 21% and scales up to like 60% when you're full build. Absolutely incredible addition to the champion. It has totally reformed the way that you play this champion in terms of runes and itemization, because before last season, we had to go glacial to get that slow on her Q autos, right? Now you don't have to. So you can go builds like tank builds with grasp, or my favorite, fleet footwork, and you don't have to go into the inspiration tree. So you basically get like 2 keystones. You get Glacial Augment built into your Q, and you get Fleet Footwork and all of the other things that come along with the that yellow tree. Senna is incredible right now. Like I mentioned earlier, the best way to play Senna is with a Senna Tahm Kench lane, but you can play her with anything. I'm blind picking her. I'm last picking her, first picking her. Senna is very, very, very good. So I'm excited to talk about that. I'm not so excited to talk about this next one just because Lulu she's pretty much always strong, it feels like, these days. I don't know what like Rioter mains Lulu, but yeah, Lulu's really, really strong. She can empower a hyper carry jungle. She can empower a hyper carry ADC. Yeah, it's Lulu. Lulu's strong, guys. Okay, so that is the tier list. We got tier 1s, very, very, very good. Best of the best. Tier 2s, very good. Tier 3s, these should be relegated to like only play them if you really like them, or if you're skilled at them, or if you're using them as a counter pick. Tier 4, you're for funning, guys. You're for funning. Tier 5, I wouldn't even play these champions. So let's talk about the new champion. Now, I know she is not out on the patch yet, but I do want to talk about Renata Glasc, brand new champion, guys. I've gotten 7 games in, and I've got a little bit of an idea as to where this champion's going to fit into fit into the world of League of Legends. If you don't know who Renata is, make sure you check out my gameplay on the channel. I've got a couple videos of her out already, but she is basically an enchanter that also has a hook and, more importantly, a revive. So the 2 craziest things about her kit are that her W can bring people back to life, and her ultimate turns people against each other. So she's going to be very, very good as an enchanter against hyper carries, which has never really existed before. There hasn't been an enchanter that you can lock in to counter Master Yi, for instance. But now the enemy team locks in Master Yi. Master Yi gets 10 kills and gets ahead. You lock in Renata and make Master Yi kill his own team. As for right now, I think that Renata on release is going to be very, very poorly utilized. So I'm gonna put Renata in as Renekton. This is not actually Renekton, guys. This is Renata. So I want to put Renata somewhere in like high tier 3. Her kit has incredible potential, but I've played a couple games of her and she is not very intuitive. She's got some brand new mechanics that take some time to get used to, and she's one of those champions that not only do you have to be good with Renata, the enemy team or your allied team has to be good at playing with Renata, because her W is very, very timing based. It's like Zillion ult. Like, have you ever played Zillion and you've got the ulti on someone, but they just won't die? Like, they're running away from danger, and it's like, bro, get in there. It's one of those points of frustration. So there's going to take a couple weeks for people to get used to Renata. Like, for instance, when her W goes off, they have 3 seconds to die. So normally what people do when they're 10 HP is flash away or do anything that they can to survive, right? But with Renata, it's going to take some time for people to get used to the fact that, like, you just keep fighting. Just keep fighting, because when your health bar reaches 0, it doesn't even play a death animation, right? You just have to keep fighting. And then if you get a kill in the next 3 seconds, you get this come back to life, right? So it's going to take some time. I had a lot of people running away and not using the W properly when I put it on them. And she's also just herself a very strange champion. The Q has this weird recast thing where you Q someone and then you have to recast it in the position, like in the direction of your mouse. And that'll take some time to get used to, especially for enchanter players who are used to playing things like Yuumi or Lulu and just pressing E and being super, super valuable. Another thing is her shield is a skill shot. So people are going to have to get used to the, the missile speed and things like that. My point is, Renata is not going to be absolute god tier on release, but I don't think she's weak at all. Her numbers may be slightly undertuned, but it's really hard to tell in the PvE. So as for Renata on release, this is going to be my prediction. I wanted to talk about her in this tier list just because she is one of the most exciting things happening to the game right now. But yeah, that's my tier list, guys. If you like this type of educational content, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We're going to be trying to put out a tier list every patch or maybe every other patch. But if you guys have any questions about how any of this works or anything that I've said or didn't say in this video, make sure you put comments down in the comment section, because I do respond to those. But as for that, that's a wrap, boys. That's the tier list. Best of luck on your climb and patch 12.3. Take it easy, boys. Peace.